Hi, this is Emma from Unique Phoenix. I'm a soul coach. And what do? I work with clients over 6 months, deep dive with them to unfuck themselves from past trauma, toxic relationships, and people pleasing, and intentionally cultivating trusting relationships, embrace emotional freedom, and say fuck yes to life. I love bringing you the variety of backgrounds, of kinds of work, of businesses, of people who are in service and want to help people's lives be better through whatever lens they're working through. The conversations can go anywhere, and it's really feeding my curiosity that I have. I'm always asking questions, I'm always wanting to know more, and I'm always wanting to go deeper. So welcome to today's Connected Conversation, and I'm going to let the person I'm interviewing introduce themselves, because who the fuck is better than to tell you about what they do than the person themselves. I hope you enjoy it, and I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love your feedback. Please like and share if it speaks to you, and I look forward to seeing you, hearing from you, and maybe even working with you to help you unfuck yourself. Hi, this is Emma, soul coach, helping you unfuck yourself from past trauma, toxic relationships, and people pleasing, so that you can intentionally cultivate trusting relationships. Yeah, embrace emotional freedom and say fuck yes to life. So this is a podcast today, and normally I have an interview style. It's Connected Conversations, and it's definitely here to bring well-being, love, and healing through authentic and open conversations. And today it's a conversation between you and I. Okay, it's one-sided, totally hear you there. But I wanted to share with you my story and my background, so you know who you're listening to on the other side of it. And for sure, soul coach, that's what I do. I fucking love what I do, and I love helping people get to the other side of all that stuff. Because here's the thing: trauma, toxic relationships, the need to please others before you please yourself fucks with you. It fucks with you in so many different ways. And you know what? In every single way, in every relationship, in every part of your life. But today I wanted to give you my story and help you understand who you're listening to and what my background is. Because obviously, I coach. Here I am. And when I'm coaching, this is how I talk to people. And I want to be really vulnerable with you throughout this. So I'm going to keep having to check myself when I do it. Based on my own past trauma, there is this part of me, this habit that says I've got to be a particular way. I've got to be palatable for other people. And this is part of the reason that I'm doing video. I want to be really open about how uncomfortable this can be. And I fully honor how my clients show up in session, because this is what happens. We talk about their most uncomfortable, darkest shit that happens and has happened in their life. And we go to that place and unfuck it. I mean, how we do that? That's all part of the course that we do. It's all part of the 6 months in working together. It's the minimum I work with people, because quite frankly, we need time together. And the honest truth is it's taken me time to get to this point. So hopefully, you can stick with me, and I, hopefully we'll stay on point, although I can go off topic. And if you've listened to Connected Conversations, you know that I do, that I just, will ask a random question. And so I might have a random thought because I haven't got any kind of script here. I've got stuff written down, which I'm going to put to the side so I've got nothing in front of me. And when I'm interviewing someone, I definitely have questions in front of me to keep me on point so that I can, get the information, that most beautiful information that they want to share, and about their history and background and what they do and what excites them. And I love that in the interviews, that we can draw that out, get that, what lights them up, what really turns them on, and, like draw that out of them. So that's really exciting as well when I get to do it. So it's you and me today. And I'm fucking stalling. I'm not even gonna lie. I've written parts of my story down, but I've never fully told it. And again, part of that is that past trauma stuff. So, and also a component of that is growing up in part of my life where there was pretty extensive domestic violence going on between mum and her boyfriend. And through that, you learn, not saying fucking correct at all, in fact, it is bullshit, and like, I'm going to go off and ramble, but I won't. You learn to stay silent. You learn that you need to hide parts of yourself, that you need to hide parts of your life, and because those parts of your life are not okay to share, that they're private and they're not anyone's business. And I want to say this about that. Fuck off. If you ever think someone is being treated really badly, and if you ever think someone is being abused in some way, tell someone, share it. We need to get back to this idea about community, and it's well before my childhood. I'm 46 now, and it's well before my childhood that this would have happened. But I was sitting with my nan's friends, and they would talk about different things, like, which was amazing to me. And they spoke about having community where, which surprised me in some ways, because I never thought that was true until this point. And they said in the community, there was a couple of them who've been friends for a long time. They had grown up together, and they said there was a family where he was being abusive. And basically the men in the community went and took him out of the house and said, we need to sort you out, mate. You can't keep hurting your wife, and you can't keep hurting your kids. So they left the wife and the kids in the house. The community rallied around and helped them sort of support themselves. He went off. I don't know where he went off to, because these women didn't know either. So, where did he go to? Was he like taken out back somewhere and scared the shit? I don't know. I'm saying that's not true, but just, my little brain went a bit nuts, because I was only about 15, 16 at the time when I sat with these women maybe once a month for a little while. And then he came back. I mean, they remember it as being weeks, but one of them said, like, it could have been months. And so he came back and had changed somewhat and was kept in check. The men in the community kept checking in with him and her. They made it very clear to her while he was away that wasn't going to be tolerated here, and that they supported her, and that, and that they loved her and helped her, and they helped her with food and the kids and all sorts of stuff. So, and that just, I didn't remember that until recently, because I was thinking about, why can't we have community like that anymore? Why don't we have community like that? That when there's a family in the community, not to judge them, but to pull someone out and say, hey, listen, we're going to support your family, but you need to sort your shit out, man. Like, this isn't okay. Male or female, I'm not saying either way. Predominantly in our country, it is, a high percentage of males who are violent towards females. I'm not saying that is the correct figure at all, as in, like, that's the only way that it occurs, because it's not. It was my experience, though. But that wasn't the first time that I'd experienced violence and been around it. I was 3.5. Oh no, it was probably, I don't really remember too much. It was about 3.5, I think, when they got together, and maybe a little bit younger, maybe about, yeah, maybe about 2.5. Oh, my memory. You'll understand why as I go through and explain to you how my memory comes to be this way. So I was young, 2.5, 3.5. And Mum met this guy, they moved in together, and he was violent. He had been sent off to Vietnam War and come back and was fucking messed up. And so for me, that was a truth when I started understanding that people that were coming back from war weren't supported at all. It's so different now. They really understand it a lot differently. But back then, the Vietnam War, I believe, really highlighted to the army that you can't keep sending these men back into families and life. That they've been impacted, and rightfully so. But he drank, and he was a violent drunk, and would beat my mum. And I never saw him hit her, but it was heard. And it wasn't quiet, and it wasn't gentle. I do remember once my mum being thrown. We lived in a little unit, a 2-bedroom unit, and I remember her being sort of pushed or picked up and thrown down the hall into this shelving unit that we had, and it had all, I've got an older brother, and it had all of his trophies in it. He was in a particular sport, and he was fucking mad amazing at it, and he won heaps of trophies. Like, I remember counting once, and he had something like 100. I was like, fucking amazing. And so I digress. And so I didn't see that, but I came out of my bedroom to look at her, and she was like sitting against, and all these trophies had fallen down around her, and I do remember her being slumped and, just defeated. And why wouldn't you be? Why wouldn't you be? If that had been going on for some time, because by this stage, I was 5, 6, so we'd been with him for a few years, and why wouldn't you be? You would. And so we'd obviously been together, they've been together for a few years now, and that was kind of the norm for us. And being that we were in this situation, prior to us living in that little unit, we lived in another house. And I lived in Mordialloc at this stage. And we lived in this white sort of weatherboard house. And I'm trying to remember the street name. Elliott Street? Look, it's probably not even there anymore. God, that street used to seem massive to me. And I've been back even in the last sort of 10 years and looked at the streets and gone, a fucking small man. Like, I must have been little as a kid. And I was very little. But in this particular house, we lived there for quite some time. And in the neighbourhood was a man who... Oh no, I've got my ages. So this is what happens. For anyone out there who's listening and has experienced trauma and you have a fucked memory, please don't ever beat yourself up about it. Like, my timelines in terms of childhood are fucking messed up. Because here's the thing. No, we must have been living in those units, the 2-story units, when I was 7. Yeah, 7, 8, 9. We lived there for a couple of years, few years, and yeah, right. Okay. So I was 5 or 6 when we lived in this, from about 3 to 6, when we lived in this little weatherboard house in Elliott Street. I'm pretty sure that's the name. And so from there was a guy in the neighbourhood who was a single man, and at the back of his house, he had like a menagerie of animals, and he had chickens and he had some ducks. And I want to say he had a sheep or a goat or something. There was some other bigger animals. one of my first experiences with him was when the little chicks were hatching. And there was a whole group of us in his kitchen, a whole bunch of kids was in his kitchen. And there was a few teenage girls there, and I was there sitting up on the bench, and a couple of my friends were there, and there was a whole group of us. And he was showing us these chickens and these little chicks hatching. And I still remember he kept touching my shoulder and my leg, and I was so young. I was just 5, and it didn't occur to me that anything was wrong or going on, albeit I probably wasn't that comfortable, because even though I didn't know these teenage girls, when it was all winding up and they'd started hatching and we were like, okay, we've got to go, he was saying to me that I should stay. I can stay and watch them hatch until the end and all that kind of stuff. And the teenage girls turned around and said, no, she's coming with us. And so I, was like, oh, cool. Here's me, this little, 5-year-old thinking, yeah, these fucking teenage girls want to hang out with me. And so they took me home. They, one of them must have known who I was, and they walked me home. I don't remember telling them. But he was definitely having some sort of an argument with them, so to speak, like really trying to convince them that I needed to stay. Anyway, I must have seen him again, because I have memory of going over there again and again. Now, I'm going to really be straight about this. I'm about to share something with my mum and something that she did, and I really don't want any comment on it about her being a bad mum or whatever, because quite frankly, my mum had some learning issues and challenges. Her intellect was actually quite low. She had her own deep challenges in childhood, which meant that her intelligence in terms of perhaps reading situations may not have been in the right place. I also want to say that there's no right or wrong here. It is what it is. But she was also in her own situation of violence as well. And I think when you're in those situations of violence, you can miss a lot of things that happen around you, because you're just trying to fucking survive. So I have a memory of my mum taking me over to his house, because I obviously had been begging to see the animals, and that's when it all started. I was groomed, so, and for anyone listening that doesn't understand what that means, it means that I was given a real message about the okayness of this, that this was a normal thing, and that this was a little secret that him and I had together. That went on for a couple of years. I have memory of just different timelines and different ages of myself. And then we moved. So we moved, and he had no access to me. In terms of how much and how detailed, this is where the memory thing comes on and comes into it. For some people who experience trauma, their memories and their brains will compartmentalize things, and they'll put them in these little boxes and these little safeties. And until they're activated by events triggered, you might want to use that word as well, you won't really remember. How was mine fully triggered? Mine was triggered 2 years ago. When COVID started and we were told to wear masks, I went into panic attacks and freaked out. And suddenly the very small amount of memory, like photographs that I had of these events, and knowing that I'd experienced this, went from a very small few photos to a whole fucking wall and some moving pictures as well. So in the span of a couple of weeks, I went from knowing that this had happened and, but to having this full experience of how long it went for, the different other events that were in there, more explicit details of the trauma itself. And that, yeah, it caned me a fair bit, I've got to say. Like, that really, it woke me up a lot to things happening around me, but also it woke me up to what I still needed, the dark spaces in me. So even at that point with my coaching, I mean, it's exponential what's happened since, and the depth that I can go to with clients now that I've gone to the deepest parts of myself. It's allowed me to go to other parts of myself to understand like what that does to your personality, and what that does to your ego, and you know, the safety that it wants to create for you, and how it does that, and the patterning and the programming that it keeps you in. Now, the other thing I want to share with you is when I was a little kid, we used to, and it was after this had finished, so it was when we'd moved into the units, and you know, we had a different kind of community around us. And although at that point there was another man who, you know, copped a feel every chance he could get me alone, and that probably was, it was very minimal. I was very wise to it at this point, and so I didn't really let him have access to me very much, which I know is horrifying to say. I'm saying it, and anyone listening, please don't think for a second that I'm trying to minimize this experience. It's just that I've worked through it, and I've worked through it at such a deep level that I'm able to talk about it. I mean, there's still a high amount of emotion for me, and it's still, you know, it's heartbreaking to believe that this occurred in your life, and that your parents would miss this kind of stuff going on, and that they wouldn't, you know, wouldn't see. But that stuff still happens today, you know. That's still, these things still happen today. Kids are still being treated like this and are having these experiences today, and it's happening for I don't know what reason. I can't even tell you that, but you know, that's the thing. We want to beat everyone up for it happening, but it's still happening now. And I know none of that made sense, because I'm still I'm actually still like, holy fuck, I'm actually talking about this stuff, and I'm recording it, and I'm putting it out there. And so from there, as a kid, as I was saying, I used to like have people in circle and like talk about their feelings and ask, how did you feel about that? And, oh wow, is that what you did? I was still doing all of that. My mum, remember, she told me a story when I was 14 or 15, and her and a friend were sitting in the kitchen having a coffee, and they could hear talking, and there I was, you know, directing and asking questions. They could hear me, and Mum said, oh, you know, you were so interested in other people, Emma, and you wanted to know about their feelings, and you know, I would get up every now and again and give someone a hug and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty funny. There was one time that they witnessed me sitting on the trampoline with a whole bunch of kids, and I don't know whether I suggested, or I can't remember, or someone else did, but there we were with our pants down, and everyone was looking at everyone's bits, you know, everyone was looking at everyone's penises and vaginas, and you know, like, no touching involved, just looking, just checking out what everyone else had. And you know, I think someone gave a bit of a chocolate starfish there as well, and thought that was hilarious, and we were all like, I don't want to see your asshole. So, you know, amongst all that kind of painful stuff, there's also some good stuff as well. From there, when we moved, my mum eventually ran away from that man, and we moved down to a place called Geelong, and right down the coast in Port Arlington. And you know, that was probably the first time that I really felt free. But at that point, all the trauma was sitting in me, and it was coming out in behavior. I was not listening. I didn't want to listen to my mum. And, you know, I can look back now and appreciate fully why, because, you know, what I felt as a kid was Mum had handed me over to this man. She didn't know that she was doing that, but That's effectively what happened. And so I was sent through family counselling and all that kind of stuff. I had this amazing teacher in grade 5 and 6 when we moved down at that stage. So I must have been 10. And I had this amazing teacher, and he could see that I was really intelligent, could see there was so much more to me than the behaviour that was in me. I had shame programming at this stage. I had trauma programming. And there were patterns emerging in me that were so ingrained, and you know, from living in domestic violence, from going through my own childhood trauma as well, and then feeling this freedom. And then I got to grade 6. Now keep in mind at this point with the I've just forgotten my words, I'm so sorry, with the it's gone. Grooming, thank you. You can tell how deeply uncomfortable I am because my words are just a little bit, they're hard to come by in some of this. So thank you for staying with me and thank you for listening. I appreciate you and allowing the space for me to do it. So he could see more, I could see more, but there was definite programming, and that was from the grooming. Now in grade 6, we had sex education. I don't know what they do now, but we had sex education. Oh yes, I do. Family life. We had sex education, and we were talking about, consummation and making babies, and they kept talking about consensual. And when that was discussed, and then they started talking about between adults, that it only happened between adults. And for me, sitting in that room, it was, I went numb because it dropped in. And it dropped in for me to understand deeply that I had been abused. That what happened to me was not actually normal and it wasn't okay. They started to talk about those things in this session. And it was really interesting walking home that day because I didn't feel anything. And I went home to my mum and I explained what I learned. And when I said it to my mum, she said, "Oh no, that didn't happen. I would have known." That you're imagining that, Emma. That didn't happen to you. And I thought, okay, because I didn't really have a clear memory. Keep in mind, I didn't really have a clear memory of what had happened. I had like 1 or 2 photographs. That's the only thing that had come up at this point. But those photographs were pretty explicit to me and kind of told me that it did happen. So I've been groomed and now I'm being called a liar. And I'm sure so many listening can relate to this, can understand, and perhaps have had your own trauma experiences which show you that it's not just the actual experience, it's what happens afterwards as well. So here I am experiencing my trauma again, and I'm being told that I'm a liar and it didn't happen. Now, I totally get that. I can appreciate that from my own mum's experience of her own domestic violence and that being hushed and shushed and no one talked about it. How possibly could she have spoken about, and with her own learning challenges and her own intellect, how could she have possibly been able to have that conversation with me? So I shut it down, but my behaviour got worse. And then we moved, I went into high school, and as a teenager, I discovered sex and drugs fucking really quickly, like, woo, laser fast. I mean, I was already kind of fooling around back in, a little bit in primary school, but in summer holidays, I'd kind of had a few, things that were well above my age grade, let's just put it that way. But I was so that's what I thought you had to do to get affection, to feel close to someone else, in terms of a male. So I had a very warped perception about what a relationship looked like, and things would happen very quickly. And so I didn't have any relationships. What I had was a lot of sex, and what I had was a lot of drugs. And that went on, that kind of self-abuse went on until I met my first boyfriend. I moved to Melbourne, met him. He had his own set of shit going on, and I ended up in a domestic violence relationship. Most of it was emotional and mental, and only near the end, when I started to pull away, did it get physical. So, and then I met my ex-husband and was with him for 18 years, and he truly was a very sweet and loving man, and it worked well. The relationship that we had worked really well for a long time. And then I started to really unfuck myself once I had kids. So that's, that kind of started my unfucking about 16 years ago. Yeah, when I really started to, I was already starting to dabble in different things, different bits and pieces, and want to know more and learn more. I mean, I'd obviously always been a curious soul. Even as a teenager, I remember sitting on the beach one day and one of my friends was kind of freaking out. And so we sat and had a meditation session that I took them through. So I was always interested in this. I was always interested in the spiritual, and I was always interested in soul and heart, and always interested in, how the behaviors of people and why they did what they did, and trying to understand. It was always part of my world. But I was so covered in so many layers of just consistent trauma and self-abuse and abuse that I didn't know how to get from underneath them. And then kids came along, and suddenly I was catapulted into, I've got to get fucking underneath these, because the parent I could see myself becoming was not the parent that I wanted to be. It was loving with conditions, and that's not how I wanted to be. So it took a while for me to move through that and use different modalities, and I still didn't understand what fully was going on. And I went and saw counselors and did all the work and did all the fun stuff. So I've been in personal development for over 20 years now. And at one stage I was in a different business, running like a smaller business, and through that I had lots of opportunities to go to conferences and see speakers, and it was just all development. Lots of training courses in there that I did on my own. I started to work with other independent coaches as well, and other things. And then I left that and started my own coaching business, because I knew there was something more. I knew that I could offer more in terms of what I was doing, because I was selling a product in that business, and it didn't feel true to me anymore. I wanted to go deeper with people. I wanted to deep dive in the darkest parts with people and find the light with them, because that's what I had to do with myself. I had to deep dive to the darkest parts of myself. And then 2 years ago, I dove all the way in. And like anything, it still unravels every now and again. Things still show up, and it would be lovely if I could go back in time and be in my 20s and, do some really positive things, and but all of the experiences I've had allow me to go deep with every single client that I work with, because I've gone to my own deep. And so even when I was doing my coaching course all those years ago, I really didn't know how I was going to help people. I really didn't think that I would help them move through their past traumas so that they could experience emotional freedom like I do now. Because even though that 2.5, whenever it was, years ago, when all that first happened, I didn't actually need to go and work with anyone about that. Everything I'd done to that point, everything I was doing with clients, walked me through my own process. And I emerged on the outside more free than I was before. And that's why I can sit here today, still uncomfortable. And I think the uncomfortable part is I'm saying things that make people feel uncomfortable. I'm saying things that are still happening to kids today. And I want to share with you that when I went through my separation, my ex and I separated, it's over 4 years ago now, and we went through 3 months of being fucking assholes to each other. And I still remember the day walking in, just getting on my hands and knees and bursting into tears and going, I'm fucking not an asshole. Like, I'm not a fucking asshole. I'm a really good person. I'm loving. Why the fuck am I behaving like this? And the next time I saw him, I said to him this: I'm not an asshole, and you're not an asshole. So I'm not going to treat you like an asshole anymore. You do what you want to do, but I'm going to stop this because it's not good for anyone. And it doesn't matter, how easy we might have made it. It doesn't matter any of that stuff. Kids, when they go through a separation, are still going to experience their own, traumas in that. And, no trauma is alike, and it's going to affect kids in different ways. And it has, we went through time where it did affect my kids. And there was a lot of support that I needed to offer them. And so when this stuff came up, we were a couple of years into separating. And like I said, I was able to, all that mask stuff, everything that it brought up, the panic attacks, the stress that I moved through within that, I was able to move through and, my own approach and the things that I was teaching clients to do and still do every now and again. I remind myself all the time because, the approach I have when I'm working with a client for 6 months and going into a deep dive with them is the approach that I know. It's what I learned all the 20 years that I was doing. And then when I was working in the other business, and I was coaching in a different way, but I was still coaching, working with other people. And I was learning so much along the way. But I wouldn't be able to deep dive had I have not had the experiences that I had, and had I have not taken the deep dive into my own darkness, as I said. I've definitely walked the path of the freedom matrix that I ask every single client to walk with me when they're working with me. So people ask me all the time, what training have you had? And, what have you studied? And I mean, look, I've done a plethora of courses over my time in personal development and even over the past few years. And I also do energy healing as well. I'm absolutely intuitive, and I channel quite often in coaching sessions, and they're intuitively led as well. So they're some of my favorites when I'll ask a question and I think, how the fuck did I ask that? Like, I couldn't possibly know this question and know to ask that. We hadn't talked about it. And even sometimes clients are like, how did you know that? And I'm like, guided. So I fully lean into all of that stuff because it's in each and every one of us. And now, what's my life look like now? I have really deeply connected and open relationships with my kids. They tell me fucking everything. Even the shit about me. They will have conversations with me about it. And it's tough, but I welcome it and I love it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I know my kids, from their own words, deeply trust me, and they feel like they can fully be themselves with me. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful that I've done the work. My friendships deepened, my everything deepened, and I get to live this life now where it's not fucking sunshine and moonbeams. I'm never going to bullshit you and tell you life's going to be fucking amazing and you'll never have problems. No. What I will tell you is that you'll have this amazing foundation where shit's going to come up and you're going to fucking deal with your shit. You're not going to push it to the side. You're not going to sweep it under the rug. You're not going to hope it goes away. You're going to want to deal with your shit, and it's going to be delicious and fucking amazing. Because you want to. Because otherwise shit keeps coming up all the time. And it'll be the same shit over and over and over and over and again until you decide to make changes and do something different. It's the same thing has happened to me. And I promise you, if I can move through all of my shit and the shit that I created, yeah? I won't even get into the friendships and fucking just, oh my God, my own behavior in them, the anxiety that I've experienced, the depression that I've moved through. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, right? I just wanted to share with you the trauma background that I've experienced and tell you a little bit about my story, so you know that it's coming from a place of deep knowing. It's not just training, it's not just working with clients, it's not just the abundance of courses that I've done and the learning that I've experienced well over 20 years of being in personal development and coaching. It comes from a real place. There's deep compassion that's experienced within my coaching sessions because I feel you deeply and I see people. And that's what I love the most about the work that I get to do. I had to look really deep within and use the gift that I have to see my own greatness and my own love and my own big heart within myself. And that's what I get to do. When I meet a client, I see their uniqueness and their greatness and their deliciousness. And I get to help bring that out. I get to help them experience themselves in their truth. I get to help clients get to that free feeling. Not on the outside, I mean on the inside, choosing things that feel right to you and not based on programming, not based on keeping silent because that's the right thing to do, or that's what you've been taught to do, not the right thing to do. So, I get to help them do that in a really beautiful, brave space where they can just show up and move through it. And it's absolutely rich and delicious, and it stops impacting every part of their life. Now, it could be a parent separation, it could be a grandparent dying, it could be you don't know, but you've got these behaviors that don't bring you the relationships that you want, that don't get you, don't allow you to reach that next level, that are keeping you stuck in one place. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on. And it doesn't necessarily have to be anything close to my experience that I moved through in my life. It can be completely different. It can be a teacher just embarrassing the fuck out of you in class, and that completely demolished you. It can be a whole bunch of things. It could be you're in an accident, and that's really traumatized you. It can be trauma is a whole bunch of things. Yeah. And it's really important to get underneath that. Not the why it happened or blah, blah, blah. Fuck that shit. We want to get underneath it to know how it's impacting your life right now. What's it created and what is it that you want to create? Because I promise you, if I can do it, if I can live a life where I feel loved and am deeply loving and just love that I get to create this magic with clients and get to do the things that I'm passionate about and have amazing, really high trust relationships and have emotional freedom. I'm no longer bogged down by the emotions and the stories that were attached to my past experiences. I get to feel the moment and move through it like we all get to. We all actually are born to as humans. Feeling it moment to moment and enjoying it. Highs, lows, the negative, positive, whatever you want to label it, just getting to experience it all fully, not numbing out, not trying to run away from it, and not trying to push it under the rug. We've all had those experiences, and I want to work with you. I want to help you move past them so that you can live this beautiful, delicious, rich, amazing life. And enjoy the fucking shit out of it. Because that's what we're born to do, right? We're born to be ourselves. But you can't be yourself and experience yourself through the lens and through the programming of trauma. You can't. So I want you to be yourself free from that, yeah? And feel good for being it. Because you're the only person that can. Well, that was certainly fun for me. I have loved sharing this time with you. And look, if you've got questions, if you've got anything at all, comments, I would love to hear them below and read them, hear them. I would love to read them below in the comments, or depending on where you're seeing this, you can privately message me. If you want to come across to Facebook and join my group, it's called Unfucking You. And it really is about delving into the shit bits and talking about them and having some fun. It's real, raw, and it's about creating a community as well where you feel supported and loved and seen and heard. Through that, I run a 3-day retreat called Shame Shifter. And it's 1 hour for 3 days, over 3 days, each day. And we'll go through and, get you to deeply understand your shame programming. It's a great beginning, great way for us to meet. And I'd love to see you there as well. So I'm going to pop the link below in the bio so that you can join us. And I look forward to meeting you there as well. So thanks for sharing your time and energy. Thanks for listening. And I really appreciate you being part of me sharing my story for the first time. Mwah. Bye for now, and I'll see you next time on Connected Conversations.
To connect with me, head to emmamuir.com. Enjoy your day, and thanks for sharing your time.